I wanna stay up all night with them, time and time again. I wanna feel my friends, time and time again. I wanna run round and round with them, time and time again.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Griswold Gaius Grim of the First Larp Ingression Protocol. And today I bring you me and Jan and the mythic philosophy in the wilds of Postmodernia. What happened was I was crushing on Vervaeke after the Thunder Bay Thunderbolt experience, and then he dropped his talk with McGilchrist on the toe, and I was going over that, and Jan is like, he's a cool dude who hangs out in our dive bar Discord on the internet, and he's like, oh my God, those are 100% my philosophical enemies. So and now, boom, he's on the show. Welcome, Jan.
Hey, Grizz, good to be here.
They can hear you. We're live and doing it now.
Awesome. Let's go.
Okay, so the wonderful John Vervaeke, who he's like I have a reverence hindrance, and he's like my reverence shadow manifestation. It's like, wow, that dude is so reverent. So I crush on him real hard. He and this McGilchrist fellow are your philosophical enemies. What did you mean when you said that?
I was being dramatic, but I see a lot of things that they talk about, and I don't see any resolution because they're constantly trying to get to this like rational, knowable thing. And so fundamentally, I could be completely misunderstanding, but what it seems like to me is that they keep saying, if I have this experience, if I attain this knowledge, then I will be completely rational and I will be free of the meaning crisis. And I disagree with that fundamentally, because it's just, even speaking from John Vervaeke's own, his own lexicon, that's just going to bring more combinatorial explosion, right? And so that has this like paradox of like, okay, well, now I've attained this information, but how should I use it? And so it just kind of keeps going forward and forward and forward. It never actually sees anything. And I would argue it actually makes you depressed. It's like when you want something really bad for Christmas and you get it and you're just like, okay, no, now I got it. Well, I don't really care anymore. And so,
Okay, hold on. So what I'm hearing you say, as we attempt to engage in hot dialogos here, right? Is that first that you think that they're basically Gnostic, selling secret knowledge, or the pursuit of secret knowledge, and that
right.
the attaining of that knowledge will solve someone's meaning crisis, whereas maybe pursuing it would solve their meaning crisis. And second, I gotta say that, like, in the timeline I come from, Vervaeke is the philosopher king of the Church of the Optimal Grip. And that's what he seems to be preaching towards, except in this timeline, he's very like, no, I don't want to be no leader of nothing.
Right.
But so would you nodded, as I said, Church of Optimal Grip, and does that jive with they're basically Gnostic, that's the secret knowledge they're talking about, or?
I mean, there's a twofold problem. There's the optimal grip and then the object that you have to grip, right? And so that's what I mean. There's on one hand, it's like, okay, well, once I found this thing, I will be able to grip it optimally. Those are two different things that you have to solve. And so, they have to first solve what is the optimal thing I have to hold. And then once they get it, will they be able to grip it properly? And so if you the example I'll give is like ultraviolet light. We can't see ultraviolet light, right? So we don't know how to handle ultraviolet light. We don't know how to grip ultraviolet light. And so those are two different problems. How can we ever optimally grip ultraviolet light if we cannot perceive it?
Well, clearly by building instruments that can perceive it,
But
like
you wouldn't be
prosthesis
perceiving it.
perceptions.
You wouldn't be perceiving it though, right? Like,
You're using prosthesis to perceive right now with those things on your face. How is that different than us developing something that can see ultraviolet light?
uh, that's
And hi, you. Thanks for being here.
we we don't see ultraviolet light, right? If we develop a prosthesis or an instrument that perceives it for us, we're actually using that thing to translate it into a way we can grip it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we translate it into a way we can grip it, we're not gripping it, we're gripping the translated version of ultraviolet light.
Well, what's the effective practicality of gripping something other than I mean, we're still able to manipulate reality based on our grip of it. So,
But how but my point is that you can't grip ultraviolet light because we cannot perceive it, right?
it's
And
not
so
an
if you
actual grip, is the point?
no. Like if you shined an ultraviolet beam of light on this table, I wouldn't be able to see it, right? And you're saying if we make some machine that we put between myself and the reflection of the ultraviolet light that I can perceive it, but I'm not perceiving the ultraviolet light as such. I'm perceiving the translated version that fits into my spectrum of seeable light.
All right, I am lost enough. I want to go swimming with the guys who are your philosophical enemies for a minute, and see
Okay.
if I gain some sympathy for them. Um, let's uh, let's see. Share to you and share to the show.
I use it when I'm teaching Tai Chi. When I'm telling people to stand, I say, I want you to imagine that you're standing in a river and from your knees to your feet are sinking into the mud. So you're trying to get that feeling of rootedness. And then from your knees to around your navel is like flowing water, because that's how you want that area of your body. And from here up is like air. You want to give it very little attention and it dissipating. And that helps people get into the proper way of inhabiting their body in order to optimize it for, Tai Chi Chuan for sparring. Now, that for example, that's one example of how the imaginal helps ratio. But Hirschfield and others, just you go into people, the academics who are supposed to be the best, right? And you give them clear argument and evidence that they should start saving for the retirement. You make sure they understand, you allow them to voice any disputes, you get agreement from them all. You come back in 6 months, none of them are saving for the retirement. Then you do the following. And of course you have control groups and everything. I'm just giving the experimental group. You ask them to imagine their future self as somebody that they love and care about. That's somebody that they have a relationship and a responsibility to, a member of their family. You come back in 6 months and you'll find two things. They are now saving, and the people that more vividly imagined that future self were able to save even more. And you say, so what? The ability to aspire to your future self, and this is Agnes Callard's argument, is central to rationality. Rationality is ultimately about self-correcting. It's about aspiring to become more rational, wiser than you are. And therefore, the ability to properly aspire is dependent on the imaginal, yet it is central to rationality. And therefore, they are inseparably bound together. And this is something I thought.
The ability to properly aspire. On sale now at the John Vervaeke house, right? That's what he's selling. The ability to properly aspire.
Right. That's a grip problem, right? So, let's he started that by talking about, Tai Chi and how to act as if you're sinking in mud, right? And so let's just say,
he was selling how like we can use imaginal and play to facilitate practical efficiency outcomes in our non-imaginal pursuit of things like Tai Chi.
yeah. So I have to, I think this goes back to the ultraviolet point we were trying to go earlier, and we can build on that. But, you know, when you tell someone, hey, you know, do this Tai Chi like you're sinking in mud, like you're feeling like you're sinking in mud, right? If you come from, let's just say, a place where it's completely dry and there is no mud, how do you optimally grip sinking into mud without ever having experienced mud?
That is just like your teachers using a terrible example because they don't know you well enough.
Right. And so what they would do
there's
is,
still the like, what are you doing? What are you giving the student to help them understand how imaginal play helps the situation?
yeah, but so what you would do if you were a better teacher is you would say, well, they would go, well, what is mud? And then you would tell them something that is analogous to mud. And then instead of imagining that you're in mud, you analogously pretend you're sinking in maybe something like quicksand, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, you need to have that object, that grippable object. Here, it's the mud. And you need to be able to have some sort of representation so you can grip it. So if you don't know what the mud is, you have to say something like quicksand, and then someone goes, oh, okay, now I know what you mean. I know how to optimally grip that.
Okay, this seems to be a semantic deflection, as like the real point in this particular case is like I could stand up from this chair, and I will if you put enough bees in the hive mind chat, and like mime being stuck in mud with like whatever I'm miming it in my body wouldn't matter because you'd be perceiving what I'm trying to get you to understand about the experience of being. I could mime it instead of using words in it.
I yes, but I think we have to separate that. Um, the the analogy I'm trying to make is that the optimal grip, you have to optimally grip some sort of knowledge. And so what are you, it's two different things. What are you trying to grip and how do you grip something? And if you don't know what that thing is like, there is no optimal grip. You cannot know what optimal grip is other than by analogizing it, right?
Okay, but okay, say. All right, let's take the optimal grip and just slide it over here, and instead we're doing Christ. Christ is the
Okay.
ideal. Oh no, oh no. I apparently have to mime in a second. Like the optimal grip and Christ are the same. They're both like the pursuit of ideals, imaginal ideals. And at best we can imagine them better. But it's
Yes.
like we're pursuing the ability to imagine them better, to better embody and envision our perception of them. I don't like, okay, but ultraviolet light, right?
Okay.
Here, I'll let you hide for this. Sorry, everybody. When you say things and then people call you out on them by putting a bunch of emojis in the hive mind chat, what actually fulfilling what you said does is what I call maintains the integrity of your logos. So like if you say you're gonna start a online education humanities course and it never happens, the integrity of your logos is shaky. But if you say you're gonna mime like being stuck in mud convincingly, if people put enough emojis, then you're kind of stuck to doing what you said, or the integrity of your logos crumbles. And now, my camera here's some more of these guys,
Like later.
but this time over at 104.
Activity has no job to do. I think it's a very important term. And what it means is arriving at the most rich, most true perception of what it is one's looking at. And that means not allowing oneself to be swayed by some completely extraordinary biased way of looking at the world. So I'm equally opposed to that. And just because the clinically detached, impossible view of the non-person is not possible doesn't mean that it's free for all for any point of view. Not at all. Some points of view are dreadful, noxious, not only untrue but damaging. Other points of view may be rich, welcoming, and unfolding of life and vitality and creativity.
Yeah, and again, I'm in agreement with you, because I was not proposing a rejection of the notion of objectivity. I was I was proposing to reject a particular model that has held captive. You know, Wittgenstein's idea about a picture holding us captive.
Yes. No, I knew you weren't saying
Wittgenstein's idea of a picture holding us captive. Hello and welcome to the Grim Grizz live stream of Hyonshu, Mythic Philosophy in the Wilds of Postmodernia. Hopefully holding you captive because we feed algorithms around here and your view time is the most delicious. So anything you want to pick up from that random segment I just played of your philosophical enemies?
I'm kind of blanking out on that one. You know, I'm still kind of stuck on that whole thing, to be honest with you. So maybe you can go ahead and take over.
No,
you know what
we can roll back to what we're actually stuck on. That was just a clip for me to have time to readjust the camera after the miming I had to do. So, what I'm gathering the most is like either there's a disconnect between the cultivation of a self towards the optimal gripability, or what the Church of the Optimal Grip is trying to teach us to pursue. And like you think they're trying to teach us to pursue something else. Or I have it wrong, and there's an ultraviolet thing that I can understand that I'm not understanding.
I think McGilchrist is right when he talks about the relationships. And so, you know, if you have relationships, you have to have things that are related, right? And so I think when we say optimal grip, the optimal grip is the relationship. I want to have an optimal grip to the thing, right?
With reality.
And so, no, it's not.
You think that
you can't have an optimal grip on reality as such. Like it's just too much to do, right? So it has to be a specific thing that you have a relationship to, right? Now, you can take that optimal grip to the cup and apply it to a ball. It wouldn't be optimal anymore, but it will be good enough, right? So I guess what I'm saying is whatever you relate yourself to, you can replace that with something and you can still have the same grip towards it, right? That would be the relationship. It's the analogy as opposed to the thing of the analogy.
And how is that ultraviolet light?
Ultraviolet light is something that we can't grip.
But we can have an optimal relationship with the tools we build that sense it.
If you compress ultraviolet light to violet light, I can grasp violet light. Go, okay, yeah, that's violet. But if it's off the visible spectrum, then I cannot grab it, right?
Well, do you not have a grip on radiation? It can cook your food in a microwave, and you still don't. I mean,
how do I grip it? How do I grip radiation?
By pressing 30 seconds and start.
That's not. You're not gripping radiation. You're gripping the sensation of your flesh searing. That's a different thing.
No, right? I'm talking about microwaving something. Like, you as a human have a grip on radiation because your people have harnessed it into a machine that can cook your food. How is that? How's that not a grip?
You're inserting tools between how I interface with the universe and saying the tool is the grip, and the tool is not the grip.
No, the
How I
grip is
grip the
your grip
tool,
on the tool, and the tool's grip on
right? But
reality.
that is not. But that is not me. That's not me gripping radiation. That's me gripping the tool that grips radiation. You have to understand. That's technology mediated. It's
But
very different than.
but using a tool is often the optimal grip on the situation.
I disagree with that completely. Sometimes the microwave doesn't, make my hot pocket the way I want it to. That's not an optimal grip.
It's
That's not an
more
optimal mode for that microwave
compare
to
what
be
are your
working.
other options. It's optimal among the field of possibility accessible to you.
But that's not optimal anymore. That's just better or faster or some specific telos. That's not optimal as such. That's not optimal for me.
Don't you think optimal has to be adaptable enough not to be static? Because like it sounds like you're making optimal static.
Making optimal static.
And optimal isn't a static state. It's a ability to responsibly to relate to chaos.
Correct. And that's optimal for me, but optimal for a microwave is not the same thing. Do you understand?
Well, I
The tool
understand.
changes what optimal means.
Okay. I would call it a fractal differentiated expression of optimality, but I just like to try and use big fancy words.
No, well, if I understand that properly, you're just saying it's splitting optimality into multiple different paths and it's choosing one, but that is not optimal.
Well, you have to be optimal for the existing arrangement of molecules and atoms around you. I mean, you can have optimality as the formless form of optimal, but like once you're in matter, optimal has to collapse into a particular arrangement of particles and events. I mean, optimal can only be optimal for the now or formlessly, right?
Optimal for who?
The agent.
But the agent is not the tool. The
The
agent
agent is
uses
the
the tool
tool. The agent is very much the tool.
of who?
Right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mythic Philosophy in the wilds of Postmodernia with Jan and Gris. Remember, everybody, there is no agency. We want what's best for you. Let's see what we've done to the hive mind over here. You wins with the number of bees. All of them. Thank you for making me mime you and maintain the integrity of my logos. Gander says Ian has a beautiful door behind him in these clips, which is a beautiful excuse to run some more of that. Thank you, Gander.
That I just wanted, for everyone's sake, to make clear that neither of us were really going down that particular rabbit hole of postmodernism in which every point of view is equally valid. Absolutely not.
No.
Some points of view are utterly absurd. Others are extraordinarily deep.
So my view on this is deeply influenced by a confluence of sort of the third wave of Platonic scholarship and Merleau-Ponty, and the idea. First of all, so here's a thing, and first of all, realize that you can never see the whole thing. You can never see the whole thing, no matter where you look at it, right? There are multiple aspects. And they're not only multiple aspects in terms of its visibility, there's multiple tactile aspects, there's multiple auditory, there's multiple uses of this. And then what you start to realize is that there is multi-aspectuality, and then not only is there multi-aspectuality within a person, there are multiple perspectives on any one thing. This is why dialogical reason is so important. And then for me, what you're trying to do, and this is Merleau-Ponty's sort of critique of Husserl, you're trying to find the through line, because what you realize is that, right, this doesn't come off as a cacophonous, cubist painting. There's a melody here, and this is not logically identical to this or this or this, but nevertheless, there is a through line of intelligibility, what John Newsom calls a musicality.
What John Newsom calls a musicality. Jan. I don't know. I just ran to the shed to get some nicotine. I have no idea what he was talking about. But when I came back, he was talking about a melodic through line of musicality. And I think we can achieve that here together.
Okay.
Okay, so like if I run with the philosophical enemy statement, the thing of it is, I'm working on this thing called the God mask. Because in my personal view, our society, the West as such, has failed to maintain a ritual that brings adult men from boyhood into help maintain society, or we're all going to die. And so we've had the extended adolescence and whatever, and we need to reinstitute an initiation into manhood ritual. And for me, that's a thing called the God mask, where like you take a kid, you play paintball for a minute, and then you end up putting this thing on his face with 4 sayings on the inside but I don't know what they are yet. But I'm trying to figure out what they are. So in pursuit of that, what in your philosophy would you give to an adolescent male becoming a man in today's time? What do you have for anybody coming of age in the now?
That's such a very broad question. I mean,
I know, but if the kid's here, he's crying, and you got like 5 minutes with him, what are you going to say? You must form
I really
a
don't
self
know.
that is a private object. All right? He's going to... Look, kid, you're going to have a private object in your head that is yourself. And here's what you need to know about it. I mean, at least give him your public and private object spiel, Hyun. He's got a
I don't know if
code.
I don't know if that's relevant here. To me, this is continuation of the optimal grip thing, right? When you have 5 minutes with a young man, you say, you're basically saying, here are the 4 things you need to know to optimally grip the world,
Or
right?
here are the 4 things we need you to know to help keep things running. How about that, rather than to help, like, here's for you to optimally grip the world, kid. Here's what we need from you, or everything falls apart and we all die. Welcome to manhood. That's more where I'm aiming, but because I didn't get that, and now I'm 45 and live streaming on YouTube about like what seems to be mostly intellectual masturbation, but there are practices emerging, so I have to have a little hope that there's some embodiment here, right?
Well, why don't you tell me where you would go with, and maybe we can start those as a discussion point.
For the 4 things?
Sure.
I
Or
can't. I'm not there. Where I'm at is the lobster-monkey manifold. Whereas like the amount of information is such that we have to coalesce into clusters of neurons to just process together how much, like we have to do relevance realization as groups now because of the amount of information that's flooded in since the internet. Because like you got like history, and then the printing press, the telegram, radio, television, internet, and now it's just the flood of information is so much we have to hold it together like ants and form rafts of information processing to get by, like. And as part of that, an important aspect is going to be a defense against the dark arts and like savings throws versus mind control, and like as a species we've researched how to influence your behavior. These are the tactics in use. So it's like that's why I call defense against the dark arts class is like advertising propaganda. Like if I was raising kids, they'd have to watch Mad Men. just to understand at least that much of what's going on in this world around them.
Why don't you just turn it all off?
Well, that seems, if I have to endure a life here, then turning it all off would be like the same thing as retreating to a monastery, which is an option. I've strongly considered, if I could find a monastery that would take me, I would definitely consider going.
You kind of propose that as a foregone conclusion, and so
As what?
you know
What's the foregone?
that all the information, that you have to try to process all the information, and you don't. And so I guess I'm trying to.
You have to determine what information is relevant to your knowledge, your compartmentalized knowledge needs to exist in your environment. I mean, that might be watching TV to figure out what to follow along with the herd. And that's what it was up until 2020. It's like, as long as you watch TV and could talk about the same shows as everybody else, you could get by socially just fine. But now.
All right. But still, the whole argument is undergirded by the fact that this information is not up to your control, and you're just going to be completely bombarded with it, like radiation. So my question is, it's not like radiation. You can turn most of it off, or you can figure out how to navigate it, very well, right?
Yes, there are solutions for the atomized individual, but I think the atomized individual solutions are problematic because the atomization of people follows with the divided we fall thing. I see it as they destroyed they nuked the extended family, and now they're ripping children from parents. We're being atomized into individuals because individuals are so much easier to control.
But you're talking at such a broad population level, right? It's within your grasp to raise your own extended family or have your nuclear family.
Where?
And what do you mean
The
where?
world's on fire, bro. I don't.
That's why it's going to be. Your argument is saying that it's going to be more difficult for sure, but it's not impossible, right? And so if it's not impossible, you can do it. And if you can do it, other people can do it. And if other people can do it, we eventually see, I wouldn't say a reversal of it, but you would see at least a dent.
This is the this is almost the Church of the Optimal Grip. Like, if you individually grip yourself, then your life and your family your way, then everything will be fine, right? How is this? It's not. My aspect is that's not going to be fine anymore. Everybody just making sure they're okay is no longer fine somehow. It's too, things have exploded too far. I mean,
not following.
There's no telos of just surviving as a family unit when the society is this mad.
Wait, why not? Tons of people are doing it. We just don't know about them because they're not on the internet.
What do you mean doing it? Like getting bunkers ready?
No, you don't have to get bunkers and do all this survival training. You can literally just raise your family, not exactly the way as we were doing a while ago, but it's still within your grasp, right? Fundamentals of a nuclear family, we'll just say mom and dad and some kids, and they're going to a school that isn't pushing too much weird narratives on them.
At this point, you have to let them spike and impregnate your children.
See, this is where we're differing, is that you see this as a foregone conclusion, and that's where we're going, and there's no way out of it. But you're also asking me, how do I get out of it?
There is a way out of it. I'm just saying, all I was asking of you is like what you would tell a kid growing up in this, and like what you see this is and what I see this is are like so stochastic, maybe, that there can't be meaningful communication between us at this level, I don't think. I mean, there are plenty of angles we agree on, but like the state of reality is apparently one that's no, not among them. Let me see what these folks are saying about what we're saying. I call dibs on being the hull. Paintballing lets that temporary war lust out and is a fun experience. Terribly important lessons. I like how the water feels flowing through my hair. Just turn it all off. Okay, yeah. I turned off my brain decades ago, and look how I turned out. They nuked the family through the screens that broadcast programming. I've known 3 men who lived the monk life. One worked with Desmond Tutu and became a chair maker. One saw patterns of his religion in every religion and went on to found a brain injury charity. And the last did the monk thing at 50 after a lifetime of chaos and as calm as now as ever. All right, Gander is selling me on the monk life. So that's an option now. Thanks, Gander. All right, Hyun, where do you want to go with this? I've titled it Mythic Philosophy in the Wilds of Postmodernia. What do you got? We'll close it off and call it whatever happened.
I don't really have anything. Do you have another clip that we can watch?
Yes. What were the Hey, hold on. I messaged you the times. 111 is one. Let's see if that's where I'm at. Almost. We were 4 minutes shy. Here's I have no idea what this is gonna be. Hold on.
Exactly find that. And for me, Goethe is talking
Go back 30 seconds.
motivation, but is the inexhaustible fount from which intelligibility flows. And I think for me, that has been my fundamental, phenomenologically rich and reflective experience of the sacred, to exactly find that. And for me, Goethe is talking about that when he's looking at the plants. And I see the same thing when you, in the Platonic dialogues, you have this quest, right, to find the virtue, but you never get to the answer, but you get the through line running and all that sort of thing. For me, and like you said, that's when I find the sacred in another person, when I realize that they're multi-aspected, multifaceted, but there's a through line and I can hear it and taste it and follow it, but I can never complete it or grasp it totally. And if I say that to her, I've destroyed the relationship. So that would be the most foolish thing to do. But as you said, everything is like that. And that means we can fall in love with being again. It's not like, for me, that's a real possibility for people. I'm sorry, that's for me what I think is, if we could enable people to read through a way of life to fall in love with being again, I think that would be a deep way of responding to the meaning crisis.
So
That's a decent description of agency, I think, right? And so, to me, what he's proposing is something like a stoicism idea, right? The Marcus Aurelius line about you can live well even in a palace. You know, even if you live in this giant, very decadent place, you can still optimally grip it, right?
Of the few books I've ever purchased, Meditations is one, but I can't find it anywhere.
But what he's saying is you can optimally grip a palace as you can optimally grip a rundown shack. You can optimally grip any situation you're in or any location you're in, right?
Well,
so that tells me.
Go ahead. That tells you.
No, go ahead.
For all the hanging out and BSing we do on the Discord and whatnot, and for all the times you've said agency and talked about agency, like that, you just admitted that falling in love with being, like beingness or being, is a close definition. That's the closest I've heard you to defining agency. Is when you said that's pretty close to agency. So could you flesh that out while you're here, thesis writer fellow?
Yeah, I mean, it is that optimal grip, right? I can optimally grip a rundown shack as I can optimally grip a palace.
Being in love with the life you're actually living is
I mean,
the most agency one can exhibit. Is that
one can make the argument that love is the most optimal of all grips, right? And so I can optimally grip this relationship I have with you, but I can also attenuate and tune that. I can say, well, I don't want to optimally grip this person because they do things that I don't like.
And
And
other
so
people might see it.
sure. But I'm free to do that as much as I would like. Even though people are trying to tell me not to optimally, love someone, I can go ahead and attenuate that, and I can always maximize that. And that is the way that I'm an agent. That is the truest way that I'm an agent. And so what's happening is that we're no longer optimally. It sounds so weird saying that, but we're no longer loving people because we kind of see them less as agents and more like objects, and they become objects for us to use for our own use, for our own gain. That is a non-optimal grip. And so if you can have those 2 points together, you can kind of directionally point your optimal grip at a more optimal fashion. Does that make sense?
I can chunk it as agency is best understood as the wise application of love.
Or the option not to. Yes, absolutely. And so, and so that's why the optimal grip thing is so hard, because I can optimally grip a cup. How do I optimally grip love? You know what I mean? That's the thing I was trying to get with the ultraviolet argument. How do I optimally grip ultraviolet if I cannot sense it or put it into words the same way I can optimally grip love if I can't do it and put it into words? And so I was actually, go ahead.
But no, well, I would. Mine was a close, so if you want to keep going, keep going. People like it when we keep going.
And so, I think I was kind of thinking about this the other day when, there was a back and forth I was having on Twitter about art, right? And so, art means a lot of different things now, but let's just define art as the expression of something beautiful, right? Let's just say a Renaissance painter, he's trying to make the most beautiful painting he can, right? But he doesn't do it by picturing what love is. Like he's constantly just working with his canvas and trying to optimally manipulate what's on the canvas to represent beauty.
I'm gonna say my respect for the mystery of what artists do preclude me from going that far along with you.
But would you say there is a subsection of artists who, when they create art, they're trying to make beauty, the most beautiful thing that they can?
I wouldn't even presume to go into their motives, and especially not to break it down into a subset. But I would go as far as to say something like, when art is made, usually through the intention of the artist, what is created is something in which beauty can be perceived. So, like, if I make it and some guy walks along and thinks it's art, sees the beauty in it and thinks it's art, then I've made art. Even if I tried to make something horrific, if someone sees the beauty in it, then what I've made is art, is where I'd take that.
So as long as one person's subjective opinion agrees it's art, it's art.
Well, it would be to them. And then they would possibly be willing to pay for it as if it was art. And so they'd value it as if it was art. Then it would be art socially, right? So art is defined by whether or not beauty is perceived in a thing.
I think that's a very postmodern argument, but I wouldn't recognize that as like a classical definition of art.
All right, but you were leaning toward the motive of the artist. Where were you going with that?
Well, I mean, so an argument that I often make is that when I say something, there's a speaker and a listener, right? So we can do the same thing here. There's the artist and then there's the art appreciator, right? So, if the artist doesn't mean it for it to be art, but the appreciator says that's art, who's right? There has to be some sort of middle ground,
See,
right?
the way my brain works, bro, is like the middle ground is the muse that either successfully or unsuccessfully used the artist to produce her wake. Like the art calls the artist to create it. The artist creates it and then it's received by the person that it means something to. And that phenomenological event wraps the people around it through motives and
but now you're arguing from the artist's perspective, where before you were saying it's the perceiver that makes it art.
well, there are those
Does
are
the
both
does the
valid
exact same muse
perspectives
hit? Does the
because like they're individuated perspectives. They're both awarenesses containing those realities. Right? There's the reality of the artist who like walks.
so how can art ever be made? If I can reject everything as art and you take that, you say that's an individuated and valid perspective, then nothing is art. Then I just negated all of art for all of creation by
No,
saying
you
none of it's art.
for your creation, for your universe, art is invalid. But I don't. You'll have to come up with some system to cope with the fact that everybody else is LARPing. It's beautiful and real. Because
I'm not following.
those are aware. Those are valid. Those are people. Those are awarenesses. Those are experienced realities, just as real as yours, right? But the muse has touched all of those lives through the sacrifice of the one artist.
I'm not following. So if the muse hits the artist and that person creates art,
Mm-hmm.
one person says, well, that's not art. The muse didn't touch that person, right?
Correct.
So who's right? The person that was touched by the muse or the person that wasn't touched by the muse?
You know a lake with a boat on it, and the boat is going. The boat is the muse. The people touched are the wake. The people not touched are not the wake.
I understand, but we're trying to define art. So whose definition of art is right? The person that was not touched by the muse or the person that was touched by the muse?
The art is the wake. All the people
The
touched by the
art
muse.
is the wake.
Like okay, so if
But
you
but I don't consider it art, so I wasn't touched by the wake, right? That's
right,
what your analogy is saying. So
but
is that person right?
okay, so you're sitting there thinking it's not art. All right, what I'm saying is there's a giant lake of people who think that the ones that are touched by it are the wake of the boat, like a line across this circle lake. There's a line that's the wake of the boat that was, and then so like there's a big circle, like with a line through it. That's the art, and that's all. But it's made of the lives of the people that were influenced by the motion of the boat.
So where's the art in this analogy? The actual
In life.
piece that people are looking at.
Oh. I'm sure it's existing in time, space, and being traveled around museums or whatever. Or it's
But in that analogy, there's no space for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
space for it. It's on the boat. It's on the boat. Ladies and gentlemen, Hyun, we can do it again, but that's... My brain is hurting now. Let me check in with chat before I give up. But this is Mythic Philosophy in the Wilds of Postmodernia with Hyun and Chris. Okay, what's chat saying? If there is a creator that is in any way interested in what we do during our time here, it's important to make its attention worth it by being art. So if there is a creator, make your life art, according to the all-seeing you. I associate my art with feeling, says Magic. Gander says there's a beauty under what is perceptible. Can't describe it, won't try, but it's there, but you will need to find it alone. Fluffy Ribbit says, is this a fully phenomenological argument? You can't know if it's art unless you've made it yourself or read minds. You kind of wants to squish your head like kids in the hall. I'm squishing your head. You're too young. He looks old, but he's a really young guy. I bet, whoa. This feels like an anti-realist argument. There's nothing in particular that is art, only a relationship I can have with a thing. Yeah, and that relationship is the sum of the relationships is the wake of the boat. You should keep going, I've been told. So, do we need another Vervaeke prompt? Do you want to keep going? Do you have enough to keep going with right now? Remember, Embody, there is no agency. It's just us LARPing. But we want what's best for you. What do you think, Jan?
What do you got left? What do you got queued up?
The last remaining clip in the list is not in that. Yeah, I opened Outlook again. Is at 2 hours and 1 minute, which is 4 minutes after this.
They're not
using the word in the 19th century. And in fact, of course, mythos was anciently for the Greeks the superior way of arriving at truth. Logos was a secondary kind of truth, which over time took over from it. But it was through mythos that one actually reached these deeper realities that I think you're describing as possibly being experienced by people in religion. The idea of marrying, yes, I mean, of course, I'm not talking, well, I don't know if I mentioned that. I mean, I was just using it as an example. But I think that the point there is that it brings up the idea of something that is fitting. Carpenters still talk about two surfaces that meet perfectly as marrying. They're fitting. And it's this sense of something that is a correspondence, that is a tension or something that is resolved in a new union. That something is what we're describing as the meaningful encounter, the faithful encounter, where something about the two surfaces produce something completely new that neither surface on their own could even conceive of, never mind achieve.
Yes. I mean, the way I would put that.
So something new and squishy is made when the grip is optimal. Like something about her mucus and his flesh. Oh, gross. That's I don't know. It was pretty intellectually intimate, the part he was talking about to me.
Well, what did you get out of it?
This new substance when the grip is just right. How is that not just any old relationship? Like any gripping results in a relationship.
I mean, I think we're getting back to the optimality issue, right?
Let's not. Wait, take it someplace else. Steer a little, man. No? All right, let's cash it out then. Thanks, everybody, for joining me and Huan on Mythic Philosophy in the Wilds of Postmodernia. Remember, everybody, you can just turn it off, according to Huan, and if you don't, come back Monday when I'll be doing another live stream like I do. Thanks, Huan. I needed a discussion. It had been a while, and I really appreciate you hanging out in the Discord and tweeting and just being a part of whatever the fuck's going on around here. I appreciate it, dude. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Good night, everybody.